If I stack up what the AI world hangs on, we've got obviously OpenAI and NVIDIA, but honestly, I'd put Harvey pretty high on the list because I think you guys represent the actual application, and particularly if a lot of the thesis of AI is that we're going to be able to sort of displace some expensive work, that this is going to go into sort of the money we're spending on services, like your success, to me, is a really important test case in how this thing is all going to go. So I'm excited to dig in to Harvey's business. Can you give us first, I know that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I was about to say, a lot of pressure. Damn, okay. I thought NVIDIA was holding this whole thing up. What's going on, guys?
NVIDIA? Yeah, NVIDIA's number one, definitely. OpenAI number two, but Harvey, very important. Yeah, give us a snapshot of your business today.
Yeah. So we're a legal AI platform. We've been selling to law firms for the first year and a half of the company. And then for the past year, we're almost 50-50 selling to large corporations plus law firms. And we also have been evolving a little bit into some adjacent areas, kind of like tax and compliance, just because at large enterprises, they kind of fall under the same org.
And give us a couple instances of how people are really extracting value from Harvey.
Yeah, I think the biggest use cases are what would be called transactional work. So large M&A, private equity is doing a fund formation, things like that. We're moving more and more into the litigation, which is the thing. Everything that you see on TV is litigation, and which is maybe the sexier area, depending on who you ask. But a lot of our work in the beginning was on the transactional side, mostly because companies do that internally, a lot of that work, and they also, give it to professional service providers, law firms.
Headcount, number of customers, revenue, what can you say?
Yeah, okay. Headcount is around 440, something like that. Yeah, so we're growing pretty fast.
And a lot of high-powered lawyer hires.
Yeah, we've done a lot of domain expert hires, which is really important for a lot of reasons. One, they actually work on the product, and in two ways. One is, we're not trying to 100% reinvent a workflow that has existed for a very long time. Instead, what you want to do is you want to build your product so it integrates with the current workflow, and then slowly you pull the user out into your workflow. And so you need lawyers on staff to actually help with how would a lawyer actually use this product. And then it's also super helpful.
So 400 plus employees, and then I interrupted you on business.
So we're about 800 customers in general. We actually started selling to the largest firms and the largest corporations first, and then we've kind of gone downstream from there.
Yeah. And then, how do you think people are going to use AI, right? I think there's been this core question of is the text box the main delivery mechanism for AI? And what's your view on that as you've built out a product suite for lawyers?
Yeah, I think the text box is going to be the entryway for a long time. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the output. So the way that I think about this is you want to basically expand your product suite and then collapse it. And what I mean by expand is you can call it agents, you can call it workflows, either way. You want to build functionality that can cover the largest surface area of what your user wants to do, and that's the expansion, right? Whether that's using data, different use cases require different UI, right? You're not going to use chat to analyze 1 million documents. That's a terrible user experience. It's impossible to audit that. And so instead what you do is you keep a simple interface, but you route whatever the user's intent is from that interface into a different UI, right? And so you kind of walk with them on the path, and you change the UI based off of what they're doing.
It sounds a lot like software, which
it is software.
People worried might die in this whole AI thing. Yeah, what have you thought about that discussion?
Yeah, I think for a lot of the work that we're doing, you really want a human in the loop. The best way to think of this is you have an assistant that is guiding you in the same way that in Slack you'd be communicating back and forth, things like that. I think that's going to exist for a very long time. Having said that, the way that we think about it is we will build out all of the mini use cases or agents that can do a task, and then we will combine them together to do a more complex task. Those mini agents, the user's not seeing what they're doing.
Right.
They never see what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter. They're just pulling terms out of a contract or something like that. And so there's a world in which people become more and more comfortable with this, and there's just more and more complex type of work that you're fine with, just it comes back to you.
Do you want to create network effects?
Yes.
And how do you do that?
The best way to do this is right now a lot of, I think like in most verticals, you basically have one side using an AI product and then the other side using an AI product, and they don't talk to each other in any way, shape, or
Right.
form.
I have my ChatGPT, you have yours. And the most
Right.
negative view of this, like I say write a long email to you, you say condense that email back to me, and we just sort of like bog each other down, which is sort of like the law in some ways.
I think that's right. At our company, it would be you write a short email, you write like a short Slack message, and then I say make it smaller, and then they say make it smaller until you get to the point where it's one sentence or one word.
Right, very tech.
That's what I'd prefer. At least.
Yes.
So I think like multiplayer is going to be really, really important. I think of like the three things that application layer companies need to solve, and I'll say the most boring one first, as like 3 C's. So number one would be like control. This is going to be really, really difficult internally. So just pretend you have a bunch of folks internally at your company. Some have permissions, access to certain documents, others don't. It becomes really hard if you're trying to do that internally and externally, and there's multiple external parties. So as an example, like take like the Microsoft Activision merger, there were like 400 parties involved in that, like 200 law firms, a bunch of banks, et cetera, tax experts, right? And so how do you do control across all of them? The other problem is going to be context, which is just how do you get all the correct information into the models and then get the right answer? And then the third one is collaboration. And so I think the control and the collaboration piece are the piece that will make multiplayer work.
And you think that applies to other companies, or it's unique to what Harvey is doing?
I think it applies to pretty much every vertical, in the sense of the best product experience would be the best in just communicating with the best employee.
Right.
In every single vertical. That's what it'd be. Like take the best doctor, and how do you put that into a product experience? If it was perfect, it would actually be just email and texting, and you just get the right answer, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not going to work. And so you need to build like the product as scaffolding to get to that level.
Where are you on the capability of agents? Like, what can your most capable agent do? It feels like even in this crowd, there's a little bit of a agent expectations reset. Like, have you experienced that?
I think like the highest value one that we have is, and this is like very legal related, but it's merger control guidelines. So when you have to go buy another company, and especially if that company operates in like 60 countries, you have to check whether you need to like file for antitrust in all these different countries. And we built something that just automates that. So you just upload 2 spreadsheets, and then it will go through and just tell you in every single country what you need to file, and it will start helping you file it.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do you build that?
So you need domain experts for one,
Right.
right? But you basically take what data do I need to pull from this bucket, and then compare it to this bucket, and then you just do that at scale, right? So you come up with, here are all the process steps that you need to do, and you can think of every single process step as just like tool use. That's like basically all it is. And so you build all the tool use components, and then you combine those together.
And is OpenAI doing the thinking?
It depends on we basically just benchmark all the best models for each one of those tool use tasks, and then basically pull that. Yeah.
What is your read, as a close partner to a lot of these companies, on how much you think things are going to improve in 2026 in terms of, the models?
I think tool use is the thing that's going to get the best, like very, very good.
So like getting the most out of this current state of the models.
Correct. And like I guess like the problem for me is if you think about the models as like capabilities in IQ or like reasoning ability, we're like they don't need to get any better on the reasoning ability to do a tremendous amount of tasks. The problem is they don't pull the right information or use the right tool set. And so if you get those capabilities to increase by a lot, you're in a really good spot. We're an interesting company where we don't need the models to necessarily get better in order to get value over the next like 5 years. Right. But if they did, it would help us a lot.
Right.
So it's a weird spot to be in. Yeah.
How much are you on the team of law firms? Especially as your revenue shifts to, private equity and people with in-house counsel. To some degree, I assume it's like you don't have to hire a law firm to do this.
No, it's actually the opposite. We work with pairs. So what we end up doing, and a lot of the intros to the enterprises are through the law firms, we will work and we will customize solutions for the law firms to help support the enterprise.
Right.
And so I think like at the end of the day, we are working with law firms as much as possible.
Yeah.
I think there are some law firms that are more open to like this type of work than others, and we will obviously work with them faster. But I think the whole idea that like a lot of these professional services are going to go is like greatly exaggerated, very much so. And I think what folks maybe don't realize that aren't in the professional services industry is a lot of what you're doing is like relationship based. And a lot of these enterprises don't want to do the work themselves. Like you give it to a law firm so they do it and you make sure they do a good job and you leave it alone. And so what we're trying to do is basically be in between and making it so if the enterprises want to use us and then the law firms on the other side, that's great. If we want to customize things to make the law firms better, we'll also do that.
When the law firm brings in their client, can they have a white label version where it seems like it's their?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is like another thing that law firms have a huge advantage of, and so does the Big Four, that an enterprise will never have is, say you're a bank and you want to enter a new territory.
Yeah.
A law firm has probably done that for other banks.
Right.
And so they have a bunch of data and advice on like how to do that. Or if you're in private equity, the law firms can tell you what the market terms are for different deals. This is why all of us like use Cooley or Fenwick or whichever Goodwin or whatever firms. Mostly why we use them is they're great lawyers, but we also use them just because they have very good data, right? And whether the data is like actually at the firm or it's actually just like in their head, they're like, hey, I saw somebody, do a tender with RSUs and they were okay with doing this.
But you have some of that now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can get that over time. But
you being us, right? Harvey is developing that expertise?
Yeah, Harvey is developing that expertise, but this has been gathered over decades. And I mean, some of these firms are over 100 years old, right? So they've really gathered this data for a while.
I mean, some of the VC excitement, I think in past Cerebral Valleys, we've had presentations to this effect, is like, be the law firm, be the, professional services provider. Obviously, you picked your approach, which is sort of be a friend to the law firm and sell them services. Do you think there are categories where it makes sense to be the professional services provider?
I think there are. I honestly don't think the tech is good enough for that yet, A. And then B, I think that you really have to understand the industry incentives, right? So in law, sometimes like what a startup needs is very, very different than what Chevron needs or BlackRock or whoever it is. And you have to make sure that if you're building a product where you are the law firm, that scales towards them. And the reality is the work is actually very, very, very different. And so I think maybe industries where the companies that are scaling that you can get into the door, they look the same as they grow, that would work a lot better.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So there might be areas of law that you could do that in.
Would you do that?
Potentially. We're not doing it right now.
Right.
Yeah.
We're in San Francisco, isolated from the world, but like you go out and talk to customers and lawyers. What do they like hearing the word AI agent? Like, how do you talk to them? What's your read on the smart, real human?
Yeah, only about like 1% of our revenue is within a 20-mile radius of here.
Yeah.
Most of it is, I think, concentrated in like New York, Texas, London, et cetera. I think it's definitely a mixed bag. I think in the beginning, lawyers weren't really paying attention to this stuff. And then in the past 2 years, they've started really paying attention. And then in the past 6 months, I think people are really thinking about this. The thing that most folks think about, at least that I've seen, is training, which is great. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And the people that I think care about their industries the most, their first thing isn't, are we all out of a job? Their first thing is, how do we help the next generation evolve into this, which is, to me, it's the best sign that person is like a good steward of whatever their industry is.
Well, we're rooting for your success. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.